But, Tom, you and I have known each other for probably 15 years now.
Yeah, 15, 16, yeah.
Yeah, so
2010, yeah.
Yeah, I know that you have a long history for many years of helping the church and tech and, communicating with leadership and teams. And, we the last podcast we did was with Gary Zanstra, and we kind of talked about similar things. But I do think that it's like
hold on.
I can't see your shirt. What does it say?
Nemosin.
Oh, nice. Classic.
Zanstra. So I was like, hey.
Yeah, I just talked with him the other day, and that came up, which was just funny. But yeah, it's like this whole relationship between production and worship team, production and leadership, I think is a hot button topic, because I think that a lot of people don't know how to do it. I think that we live in this world now where a lot of people don't like conflict, or a lot of people think that because they're being told no, that, they're being, ignored. There's a lot of weird communication breakdowns that I feel most of the time, especially tech people tend to be neurodivergent most of the time. So it's like everything feels like a slight, even though it's not. I mean, sometimes it is. I've definitely worked with pastors that are not nice people, and, they're, rude and disrespectful. But yeah, I mean, Tom, I guess let's start off, like, give us an overview of like your background. Like, where'd you come from? Like, where'd you grow up?
Sure.
You don't need to go into like every single detail, but like, who are you? What's the beginning parts of Thom McGuire's life?
Yeah. So, hey, hit the table. That'll go great. Born and raised in Washington, D.C. Until I was in I was probably 12 when I moved to South Florida, to West Palm. My mother had taken a job at a small Christian college there called Palm Beach Atlantic, and I spent a year living with my father, and then the next year moved to South Florida, moved in with my mom, and had a terrible teenage life. Was dumb, did a lot of stupid things. Eventually got kicked out of my house, got kicked out of high school, and finally the youth pastor had kicked me out of church because I had long hair and earrings. Decided that he could use me to run sound for an evangelist who was in town. And we were able to, became a Christian at that point. So at 17, that's when I became a Christian. And I'd always done tech stuff. I kind of grew up doing it. And yeah, got my very first job was at First Baptist Church of West Palm Beach when I was 17, editing their television show. So I'm old, so we were still on 2-inch tape. And so my edits were with a razor blade and Scotch tape. And then we dubbed down to 3/4 inch to send off to the local television station. So a week delayed. Interesting times.
Yeah. So like, how did you first get involved in ministry then? Like, just because like your parents went, or like you said that?
Yeah.
Like,
So I think
like
part of it,
in?
my mom was definitely, when I was a child, she was the youth director at our church, and the church secretary, and worked a full-time job. I mean, she was that person. By the time I became a teenager, she was the associate dean of students at Palm Beach Atlantic College back then, now university. And so, which is a Christian school. And so I was always around Christianity and that kind of stuff. And so when I became a Christian, it just was an easy fit. I grew up doing sound. My dad was in a Southern Gospel quartet. And so I would run sound for them when I was 6, 7 years old. And apparently every church we ever went into had a terrible sound system. And so my dad would sell them a new one and we'd go buy it. And I would be like, hey, crawl underneath this stage. And the fourth hole you see light through, hand me this cable. Okay. And so I'd just always done it. And it just became what God gifted me at. And so I've done that for years. Not just in the church world. I've owned a Christian record label for a while. Lived out in LA and did touring and that kind of stuff. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Did you grow up in like one denomination, or did you kind of bounce around? Or
Yeah, I grew up Southern Baptist from birth until I was probably 20 or 21, and then started exploring what other denominations were out there, and ended up at a Vineyard for a long time, and was in the Vineyard denomination. Now I am a pastor at a non-denominational church, so production pastor.
Okay. Did you start more on the, I guess, like, are you in this because of the creative side, or are you in this more of the pastoral side at this point? I know that they're crossing over for you because you're a pastor and that stuff, but
right. Yeah. Like, yep. So my job at the church is my job. I'm lucky in that I get to have a full-time job that happens to be ministry oriented. But the majority of my ministry is done outside the church. My goal has always been to reach people who were kind of the what I would refer to as the freaks and the geeks of the world, the people who just don't fit in to the normal church walls. And so those are the kind of people I try to reach. And so I currently do, a church service every other Tuesday night in a brewery. And I do a theology study group in a different brewery. So I'm reaching people where the church wouldn't normally go. I also do a bunch of 24/7 prayer rooms where we set up non-conventional prayer spaces for people for 24 hours a day for 7 days. So,
like pop-up ones?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to, when I retire, which hopefully will be within the next 10 years or so, that I would get an RV and the wife and I would drive around and do pop-up prayer rooms and beer or bourbon in the Bible at Coachella, Bonnaroo, Burning Man, places you wouldn't normally expect it. Electric Forest. So up there.
They definitely need it.
Yeah, I know.
This year's Electric Forest was a lot of news headlines this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw them.
Yeah. Well, let's just
I still get M Live stuff, man.
So the topic, like what do you feel like? Why are you so passionate about it? I know that you said that you were speaking on this topic at WFX, or did WFX already happen?
CFX. It's no longer WFX. Sorry. No, I've submitted for it. We have nobody's heard back yet as to who's actually speaking. So,
cool.
Supposed to hear back this month as to what's going on. I think it's because. So the question you asked is, why am I, more interested in it? You've known me for a long time. There was a certain worship leader who you probably remember I ended up in an argument with verbally in a closet attached to the choir room, right? So, and it's because he and I just weren't communicating with each other. And so I had to learn, to overshare what's going on. So you can't just say, well, I need to do this. You have to say, I need to do this, and it's going to take this amount of time, and this is why. But if you speak in tech world, right? So that particular thing was, we were setting up a bunch of wireless mics. I think we were setting up like 60 wireless mics that we rented in. And so lots of frequencies going on. Plus we had our normal wireless, our in-ears, all that kind of stuff. And so making those all work together was going to take us some time. But I had not explained that well enough that when a rehearsal came up, we didn't have mics available yet for everybody.
Well, and this was long before Wireless Workbench was what it is today.
Yeah. This is like 2011. So maybe 2012. But yeah, it was but so I've learned through those kind of things that it's really like communicating with people is the important part of it. Is, getting them to understand where you're coming from and why it needs to be the way it is, without getting too much into the jargon of, I'm trying to keep intermodulation from happening and, all those things that
they don't care
worship
about
pastors
or understand,
senior pastors, huh?
That they don't care about or understand.
Right, exactly. Right. And they don't need to. So you just have to learn a different way to explain things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah, so that's ultimately the goal of this whole talk that I'm doing and here, is that you need to figure out how to make that happen. So my current pastor that I work with, who's the lead pastor of a small 3-church, so we have a main campus and then we have 2 satellite campuses. But our sermons are preached at the main campus, the broadcast campus, to the other 2 campuses, though they do have live worship and all that kind of stuff. And they have campus pastors. Whoever's preaching is seen at all campuses. And our video system is dying. I have a 2012 4A system. And so we needed to upgrade. But explaining to him the intricacies of why we need to upgrade it, he doesn't care. So I've learned to explain things. He's a huge Auburn fan. He graduated from Auburn. So for anybody else in Alabama, sorry, who are not Auburn fans and are Tide fans. But because of that, I can talk to him and go, hey, we're going to get this system that's going to hold us over. So think of this like NIL money, right? So if your team is doing bad, but you need a quarterback that's going to hold you over for the next year while you bring up somebody younger, you're going to have to spend this NIL money to make this happen. And so that's the way I explained it to him was, hey, I need to spend this NIL money to get us something that's going to hold us over. And it did. It held us over for a year. And now we're to the point where we need to spend bigger money to get the real system we needed. But we didn't have the money then. And so we spent NIL money to get us to that point. And so it made sense to him by putting it in, NCAA terms, more than trying to explain to him, why we needed more inputs and why we needed a new video router that's 120 in and 120 out. He doesn't care about any of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because he doesn't need to know every 1 and every 0 that's on there.
Right, exactly.
You said without pastor's leadership, there is no true north. Can you unpack that?
Sure. So the lead pastor of a church is that location's. We all know that the building's not the church; the people are. But the pastor or rabbi, or whatever you want to call him, the person who's leading that congregation has to have a vision. And everybody needs to be behind that vision. If you're not behind that vision, then you're running at odds with the church. And maybe it's time to find a new place. I don't know if you remember back in the day, I spoke with the youth worship band at the church we both worked at. And one of the things I said was, if you're not called to this, quit. Because you're keeping other people from doing what they're called to do. And our worship leader, who was the worship leader for the teens at that point, was not super happy with me because a couple of people quit. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not called to be where you're at, you need to go do what you're called to do, because you're not going to be happy and where you're at's not going to be happy.
Yeah.
So that's why the true north matters. You've got to align with that vision.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And then we were saying earlier is then the next level down from that is we talk different languages. So it's how do we start to bridge that gap to support the vision? Because sometimes not sometimes, most of the time the vision that gets cast is usually a blanket vision for the church. Right. So how do we translate that vision to, obviously all of the different individual ministries, but we're here talking about tech. So how do we translate that vision into tech terms? What's the thought process there? And then how do we communicate that back and forth with leadership when we speak different languages? So
I have a monthly one-on-one with my lead pastor. So every month we get together, just him and I in his office, to talk about how I'm doing, how he's doing, where we are, where we want to go. So we're in the process of a bunch of different things with our campuses, with upgrading them as well. So we just went, because apparently production also means IT in today's world.
Nowadays.
Yep. So I'm the production pastor and I'm the IT director. Well, our campuses were still on copper for their internet. And so I did a bunch of research, found a good company that actually upgraded. We were on 200 by 200 fiber at the main campus. But I was able to find a vendor that would give us gig by gig and 200 by 200 at both our campuses, all fiber, and save us money off of what we were currently paying. So trying to get those things to grow and change in a way, because he doesn't care, right? He just wants to know that when the stream comes in, at the campus, they can then watch it, right? So we're on about a minute and a half delay. So they're playing it pretty much right after we are. So we've got to make sure that our connection is good, their connection is good. He doesn't care how that happens. He just needs to know that it's going to happen. And so we've made a bunch of changes to make that happen. We used to be on an older platform for our streaming that's kind of gone by the wayside. And so we moved to a newer platform, trying not to use names.
You can
that's
use
much
names.
better.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, so we're on Sardius, and we moved to Resi. Okay. And Resi's been great for us. So there's just it's a different way of doing things. We switch providers. So we switch from, Spectrum to Unity for our fiber internet. Mm-hmm. But it's allowed us to be much more, we don't have to worry about whether the stream's going to work now. It just works. Right. Rather than me running around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to figure out, if I cut off everybody's cell phone during this time, then we'll be able to stream better. So you're turning off your guest Wi-Fi and irritating all of your parishioners. But it's a matter of learning those things and trying to make them work better together. But again, he doesn't care about the intricacies of it. He just wants to know that it's working.
Yeah. And do you feel like the level of trust that you have with him has to be high for him to not care about those details? Or does he just not care about the details because he doesn't care about the details?
I think they know. So I came into the church after. So the church has been at their current location since 2014. They've done no upgrades in that time. So I'm still running on iLives that work, which is amazing. Yeah. But again, I've had that conversation with them, like, hey, one day I'm going to come to you and ask you for $300,000, and you're going to have to come up with $300,000 because we won't have service in a couple of weeks if we don't. So, because eventually these iLives are going to die and we need D-Lives. So just be prepared. So now they're starting to save money towards it because somebody's actually telling them that. But what they had before me was a creative director who was also the worship leader and did production for many years. And so they didn't have anybody directly in the production role. Now they do, and then we have a worship leader. So the two of us have to get along, and the senior pastor has to. They know that what they don't know is what they don't know, right? So they don't, and I'm not sure that they don't care about how it works. They just want it to work. And if I can explain to them that it will, without really diving into too many details, right? They don't care about how many packets it, sends or anything, right? So that's not a big deal. They don't care about how many packets we lose or anything like that. They just want it to work. And I think because in the 2 years now that I've been there, I've been able to accomplish that multiple times. they're more apt to just go, okay, this is what Tom needs. Let's make it happen. But I also don't spend money willy-nilly. I have a very small budget. Mm-hmm. So my budget for a year is tiny because they've been going through some changes in the church. But because of that, I don't go out and just buy things. I don't buy a ton of gaff tape at one time, right? And spend $500 on gaff tape. I buy what I need and have it available. I don't just buy random microphones to buy random microphones. I try to use what we have, knowing that down the road, that'll all change. So the church is going through a growth spurt right now. And with that, because most of our growth is new Christians and not people coming from other churches, it takes a while to grow things like tithing or volunteering and that kind of stuff, right? Because they're not used to that. It's not who they are. So this allows that group of people to move along while we struggle along sometimes to make things happen. But as those people become more involved in the church, become Christians longer, tithing becomes a thing, and then volunteering becomes a thing. And so once those things come along, I think we'll be fine. I think we'll look at each other in 5 years and go, remember when we didn't have any money? So that's coming. And I can't wait.
So, I mean, if we go back to the same conversation and go, most churches in America don't have a full-time staff member or even a part-time staff member in your position. Right. So that trust level, I feel like, has to be even higher because, there's a level of, I have to trust you a certain amount to hire you, right?
Right.
To, bring you onto my staff as a leader, which means that, I should be trusting you within reason almost, at a higher level, unless you prove me wrong, right?
Right.
What's the suggestion, for the volunteer that feels like they aren't trusted by their pastor when they come to them and say, hey, our iLives are going to die. We need $300,000. Be prepared for that. And the pastor goes, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Until the iLive dies. And then the pastor's like, oh.
Yeah. Then the pastor learns to trust that person. Sometimes trust is built, right? It's not just ingrained. I think a lot of times, especially on a smaller staff or a staff that has a lot of volunteers, including, even my position. So the guy who's basically trying to handle everything and is cobbling together with, he's got some iPhones for cameras and maybe a PTZ that he's using. And it's a smaller church. Those, I think you almost have to go, hey, we're going to need a new board, right? So I have a GLD, right? So I need something to replace this GLD. What can I do? Well, I think that's when you call in either an integrator or somebody local who's at a bigger church who can speak to the pastoral staff and say, listen, I have no financial gain in this, right? An integrator does to an extent, but having somebody local who you can call on and say, I need help in doing this, to explain this to my pastor so they understand. We used to do that up in Grand Rapids, right? So we used to do the big mixer expos, which I think, didn't you just do one? Or you got one coming up?
We did an expo that we did a demo for Fulcrum Immersive. And then we had some, we had Alan Heath and Panasonic and Blizzard Lighting and Sennheiser.
Right.
And,
so when we did the same thing, it was, Gary put all that stuff together. There's Anstra. But because of that, we had a lot of smaller churches who would come to us and ask, even some bigger churches. Cornerstone over in Byron Center actually came and was like, hey, can you come over and look at our stuff? This is before Jeff was there. So they just didn't have anybody really who was there full time. So can you come over and look and see what can we do? When they opened the new location right around the corner from the church we both used to work at, they had me come in and take a look at what they were doing. So, it's just building that trust with people locally who So like I'm in the Tampa Bay area now, so we have a Slack group that's just Tampa Bay tech people from different churches. My church, one of my locations currently needs a new screen because their screen is so loud when it drops and goes up that it's just annoying. And so we have another church close to us who's getting rid of some whisper quiets from daylight.
Oh, nice.
Perfect. Right? I don't have to try to buy one from daylight. As a matter of fact, he would just rather me come get it and not worry about paying for it. So we're going to drive our truck over there and pick it up and take it to our location and put it in. But if we didn't have that group of people who talk to each other, that would never happen. So creating that group in your area, if it doesn't already exist, is a good idea.
Yeah, no, honestly, we've been thinking about doing that here just because, like, there's a lot of, like you said, like, you don't know what you don't know. And so many people get pulled into tech because there's no one there and they need something.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, hey, there's no sound guy, right? Who's willing to do this? Oh, you're a plumber. Okay, great. Like, I don't really care. push this up, unmute this, right? And then it's like, well, we just have to figure stuff out, and that's not everyone, but that's a lot of people. And then it's like, those people that get into it go, hey, this is fun. Like, I like this and I want this to be better, right? And that's why they stick around. And that's what happened to me, right? I got pulled up. I was racking pool tables in the 180. And I remember Troy was like, hey, you, come here. I need you to run graphics. And like, when they sing these lyrics, you just hit 1. And when they sing these lyrics, you hit 2. And so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, I was like 10,
Like Media Shout, like, probably, right? It wasn't even like Pro Presenter,
no, it wasn't even Media Shout. It was like someone from the church had made a custom like software for it. And so I'm like, literally like, this is fun. And I was like hitting like 4 keys, right?
Yeah.
And then I've never left, right? I've just been in tech ever since then. So I think that I'm going to say like a long question and hopefully we can kind of put it all together. And it's like a level of like repeating kind of what we've already said, but like I want to get to like a deeper side of this. What I feel, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily right or wrong. I think that there's levels of it that make sense and levels of it that don't make sense. The cost of having a relationship with the pastor when it's unhealthy or healthy, like this level of like, do you feel like tech people get looked at like they're not part of ministry? And like, I know you sent me over like your notes for your talk because I wanted to talk about this. And like, I know you talked about like, like we've already kind of said, stop talking about Dante and IP and frame rates and all that kind of stuff. Start talking about ministry. And like, I know for me and my journey that when I found our college ministry and the pastor of that ministry wanted me to be a part of his ministry, that level of trust between us grew exponentially more than any of the other ministries that I worked with. From the leadership of those ministries to me. And I think that a level of that for me was that like he saw my spiritual growth. He saw my hunger for the ministry and that my platform was tech, just as if the worship leader's platform is singing songs, playing guitar, playing keys or whatever that may be. And it was like, so it's like my question is like, do we feel like, because like you said, like we're, the misfits, the freaks and geeks that just kind of sit in the back corner. Do you feel like there's like a level of like, we get looked at like we aren't really Christians or like we're not as good at Christians or like something, what I'm saying? Like, do we get looked at like we're less spiritual a lot of times and that like, because maybe there's not as much fruit being shown or I don't know. I know it's not really like a detailed question, but like, I don't know. Like are there levels of like the wrong conversation that we're having? And it's like, do we need to make sure that like we're ministry focused first, tech focused second type thought process? And it's like, how can our tech always push forward this ministry, or how is it going to influence and like, you know, type of thought process? Does that make sense? I know it's kind of wordy, but
no, I get it. So I think there's two different ways to. I think both ways can work, right? You can be tech forward and still do ministry, but some of that's dictated by your staff that's above you, right? So I only report to our lead pastor now. At a previous church I worked at, I didn't report to the lead pastor. I reported to the executive pastor, who then reported to the lead pastor. Or in some instances to other ministries, pastors. And when there's that large of a gap between the true north of the church and you, it's more difficult to know that because it gets digested differently by different people. So each pastor takes the information they get and they extrapolate it in their own words or in their own mind, and it's always somewhat different than what the lead pastor is saying. So there were times where I would get down to the point where it finally got to me, and then from me to you guys, that, you know, by the time I got to you all, if things didn't happen right, it always falls back on that person in the middle. And that's difficult. Now, so that's being tech focused, right? So just tech focused. And ministry is how you work with your volunteers and your staff, if you have any. That relationship. Interesting, where I'm at now is I'm directly underneath the lead pastor. A lot of my people who work on a Sunday are not volunteers, they're contractors. So I pay them to be there. So like my video directors are contractors. My front of house engineer is a contractor. Front of house engineers at all campuses are contractors. This was all set up before I got there. I would have much rather been more volunteer based, but that's not how it works. Now, not all of my contractors are even Christians. Right? They're just contractors. They're people who are paid to be there. And if we quit paying them, they probably would not show up anymore.
MXU's been talking about that a lot recently on their podcast, and they've got some pretty, I feel, pretty solid insight to kind of the feeling on that as well. There
was a church in Texas, and I don't remember the exact one, who on purpose hired front of house engineers who weren't Christians, because it was their ministry to reach non-Christians through that way, which is an interesting way of doing it. But I've got people who I think who are contractors now.
Is that tricking people?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yes, certainly. But what they were doing is they were hiring people out of the local clubs. I think the church was in Austin. So they were hiring people out of Austin clubs to come mix. Gosh, I'm 99% sure it was Austin Stone, now that I'm thinking about it. But so they would hire non-Christian guys out of clubs to come mix their church service because it was the sound they wanted. And then they would just hope the Lord reached them through what was going on, I guess. I don't know if there was any like direct,
correlation,
evangelism explosion type stuff going on. If you were to die today, do you know where you go? I don't know if that kind of stuff was going on. But because I have contractors who aren't Christians, but I've watched them in the 2 years I've been there become more engaged in what's going on rather than oh, I'm just running a camera, or I'm just running audio, or I'm just a video director. Now, I would say probably all of my video directors are Christians at this point. But they all still have questions about things. So there's often times where the pastor will say something on a Sunday morning. We have 2 services, so they digest it the first service, and in between services, they'll sit and talk to me. Okay, so why did he say this, and how does that correlate? And so I'm having more deep theological conversations with these people than I thought I ever would, based on something that one of our pastors had says on stage during our first service, because we have a half an hour break roughly between services to change over everything. So I'm watching them slowly walk that path back towards, and that's why I took the pastoral title. Was A, the church wanted me to do it. B, I was already seeing this kind of conversations that were going on, which was more pastoral than it is tech director, right? Or production director. So, it's been very enlightening and a learning process for me to be in that position. I've been a youth pastor before, but I was much younger then and didn't have, all of this white stuff on top of my head. And
that's called
could
wisdom,
get along
Tom.
with them better. Huh?
That's called wisdom.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's called old age. Although I feel like I've been turning gray forever. So to be this white now is like, oh, well, it's not bad. I think even when you and I worked together 15 years ago, I was turning gray. So, yeah, it's been a long time coming. But yeah, I think that's those are the 2 differences. I think both work. And you have to know where you're at. Because I think there are tech directors who are probably always going to be just great tech directors. And they're probably not going to be great at the quote unquote ministry portion of it. But there are people who are called to minister to people. And because outside of what I do at the church is this whole ministering to the random dudes who will show up at a bar or a brewery, or come to a non-conventional pop-up prayer room that doesn't look like church, it becomes, because that's already my ministry outside of what I do for quote-unquote work, the ministry aspect of what I do at quote-unquote work becomes greater as well. Mm-hmm. Could I have done this in 2010? No.
So you don't think that necessarily that there's like a stigmatism that we're not as godly or whatever?
I don't think that's a thing. I think that the pastoral staff has to know where your vision lies and what you're trying to do. So where I'm at now, they understand it because they've seen what I do outside of this, right? Mm-hmm. So I brought 24/7 prayer to the church and said, hey, I want to do this prayer room for a week in the basement.
Wouldn't that be them seeing your fruit?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But because they've seen that, that's why they were like, okay, now the pastoral title makes sense. I didn't get hired as the production pastor. I got hired as the production director. Yeah. And the pastor title came later when they saw that I was doing things other than just doing that. So I think it's a matter of maybe outside of your job or even inside of your job, right? If you have the opportunity to speak to people in a pastoral way, even if you're not a pastor, the church should see that and hopefully offer you that opportunity. It doesn't always happen, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do what you do, right? You need to be who you are no matter what.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. Good, I'm glad.
So one of the things that you have in your talk is having a different kind of mindset. A lot of times we tend to complain and just say, well, that sucks. It's broken. Yep. They don't give me money. I can't do anything the pastor wants me to do because they just don't support it, or the gear is crap. It's like, why did that not happen this week? Man, because the system sucks. That's a lot of what I have seen. It's funny because like communication styles are just so interesting. Like I will have conversations with tech people and they go, yeah, I told pastor this, that, and the other thing, right? And it's like, well, how'd you tell them? Well, I said this, that, and the other thing. Okay. I'm like, I don't know if pastor heard that you need to replace a piece of equipment. You have like the mindset in your documentation that says, you say you say creative should just identify problems. It shouldn't just identify problems. They should bring solutions because it's so important.
Yep.
Like, I guess break that down because like I think that that's a really good point. And like I was saying, I feel like a lot of times people just present problems and think that they're trying to think that they're communicating well, but they're just sounding like they're complaining.
Right. Yeah. So I'll just give you a for instance. We were having some problems with clicking going on in our broadcast. So in the audio, it was very light. It wasn't super noticeable, but it was enough to annoy, obviously, me. And like our online campus pastor heard it. One of our other campuses heard it on their stream. And so you go, okay, well, I've got this problem. So usually your first response would be, all right, so get a new broadcast console or get a new So I don't really have that budget to just buy a new broadcast console right now. So I started looking for other ways to fix the issue. So we actually do our stream via Pro Tools. And then so we're bringing it in via Dante Virtual Sound Card. Well, that was actually running on the computer that was down there. Dante Virtual Sound Card and Pro Tools running together on an M1 with 16 gig of RAM. Should have been fine, but we'd also have like a random crash. So we'd be fine during a service. Everything would go fine, both services. Come in Monday morning and the computer's rebooted itself. And you're like, okay, why is this happening? So you start like trying to find, where is this issue coming from? And so eventually what I did was, the first thing I did was I upgraded our computer, right? So I went to an M4 with 24 gig of unified RAM in order to try to fix that issue. Oddly enough, did not fix the issue, right? Although the crashes quit happening, we're still having the clicking. So we still have the underlying problem, but not the final solution to what we needed, right? So it fixed one thing. The computer didn't crash anymore. So then I was like, all right, well, let's take the processing of Dante off of the computer. And so I bought a PCIe NX card from RedNet and put that in a box that I had laying around and was able to process that signal outside of it and then dump it into DVS. That fixed it. But rather than just buying a new console, which is going to cost me, if we eliminate Pro Tools and I buy a new console to do this, and we are 64 channels, so it's going to cost me an Avantis, right? Basically to do it.
$17,000.
Right. But instead, I spent $3,000. $1,500 on a card, $1,500 on a computer, and solved it. And when you can start making those kind of things happen, pastoral staff looks at you differently. Because their first thought was, oh yeah, we need a new console. What's that going to cost us? When you tell them it's, $17,000 to get one. And let's be honest, D-Live to then Avantis, you're going to have to go Dante because those two systems don't talk to each other. So you have to buy the Dante card. So now you're up, so there's all those extra expenses to add on to things. And this just, because I took it piece at a time to figure out where the problem was, that by the time I went to them with solutions, they were more able to do it rather than just going, hey, it's broken, we need to just buy new. So while we bought new pieces, we didn't buy everything new. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and I think that, it's always in the way it's presented to, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because like you're like, if I'm understanding what you're saying is like, if I came to your leadership and said, "There's a bunch of clicking in our broadcast," they don't understand the tech, right? So they're like, "Oh, so we need to buy a new console."
Right. Exactly.
Well, no, like it's a Dante clocking issue. Like we think that the computer itself isn't clocking the way it's supposed to. And I think if we replace the computer, it should fix the problem. It's probably about $1,500. And if that doesn't work, then the next step would be this, which would be another $1,500.
Yep.
So I think we can solve the problem for $1,500 to $3,000 versus buying a new console that's $17,000+. Worst case scenario is that it doesn't work and we do have to go that $17,000 route, but I don't think that.
But we're still going to have a nice new computer and a nice new Dante card.
Right, which is something we need regardless, right?
Right. Yep.
That shows like, hey, like I've detailed thought process, right?
Yeah.
Not just like let's throw. I think this might work.
Yeah.
Right? Because like that's the other thing is like, oh, I've replaced the computer and that didn't work. Well, now the leadership thinks that replacing the computer was the solution.
Right.
Right. And then it's like when you come back for more money, they're like, wait, I thought you said that this was going to fix it.
Right. Yep. But placed it all out ahead of time.
Yeah. It's
so
like, no,
I thought about it.
The goal here is to spend as little money as possible and correct the problem, but just know that like there's potential steps of more and more things. Yeah.
I mean, I just spent $31,000 on video gear. And that was so the way I do, because I have a very small budget. If I had spent $31,000 on video gear out of my budget, I wouldn't have had budget for the rest of the year. So the way I do that for us is we have a ministry called the Legacy Ministry, which is people who are older who like to give money for specific things, right? They tithe, they do the normal stuff. But when there's a specific need, they're more interested in it because it's a specific need. So I write a letter to our senior pastor and the Legacy team and say, hey, this is kind of what we need, and here's why. Here's what it's fixing. Here's what it'll make us do better. And this is the cost involved. And so I've done that 3 times, and each time they've just gone, yep, okay, and they've provided the money. So sometimes it's a matter of finding those people in your church who are like, we want it to be better. We just don't know how, but we've got money, right? So every church has at least one person who's like that, who just has money, and if you explain it to them correctly, they're going to be willing to help out. May not be able to pay for the whole thing, but certainly help out.
I mean, I've been a big proponent because when we worked together, we had dying projectors in one of our rooms, and the church didn't have the cash to replace them at the time. And they weren't dying to the point of like, it wasn't a 911. It was hey, we need to replace these because like they're on their last legs. Like we could at any moment lose them. And I remember one guy coming up to me during an event and going, wow, these projectors kind of suck. I was like, yeah, they do. They definitely need to get replaced. And he was like, oh, well, I'd be willing to donate to that. How much is it going to cost to replace them? And I was like, oh. And he was like, oh. Okay, well, and then it just like disappeared. So like, I have no idea if that guy was willing to donate $100,000 or $1,000. I didn't know, right? But if I would have been like, yeah, it's $30,000 to replace these 2 projectors with the proper size ones we need,
right?
He could have literally written a check right there potentially.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And so like, I try and tell people all the time, like, hey, listen, like, you don't have to have exact numbers, like. You can get ballpark numbers from people like me all the time. Like I can sit here and tell you ballpark, like, you want to replace your entire AVL system. Like how many chairs do you have in your room? Plan on this much money. Right. And that number is relatively like spot
close.
on.
Yep. Depending on what you want to do. So. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like having those numbers, prepared. But then like the next level of that is like making sure. And I guess like I'll turn this into a question. Like how do you prevent that from buying toys versus like fixing things and pushing the ministry forward with gear?
Yeah. So I've that's a personal thing for me, is like, I would love to have the best of the best. And the church you and I worked together at pretty much, in a lot of ways, had the best of the best, right? L-acoustic speakers, Digico consoles, although we both know what Digico sometimes turns up as, because we worked all night one night replacing Digico consoles so we could have church the next morning.
Yes, sir.
I literally walked home and took a shower and walked back. It's just like, because we got to do service.
I don't even think I left. I think I just slept on a pew for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah. Look, I lived next door, so it was easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a thing, right? Where it's like, you have to spend money as if it's God's money, no matter where that money comes from, right? Because ultimately it is.
So hang on. So like, let's break that down. So that's a conversation that I like to have with people, because I feel like the word stewardship gets thrown around a lot, but I feel like it gets thrown around in an incorrect way. If I say, Tom, explain to me what you think stewardship is, like, what would you say being a good steward with finances when you're buying gear means?
I would say it's using the amount you're given to buy the best that you can. Right. So I know ahead of time. So my job previous to the church I'm at is I was a hired gun at a church in Orlando. I was their hired gun tech director. Literally, they hired me to do an upgrade at their location. So I ended up hiring an integrator to do it, but I made them give me good, better, best on everything. Well, this is the good stuff we have. This is the better stuff we have. This is the best stuff you can get for the money. And I ended up kind of mixing and matching between those, knowing what the church needed. So my budget for that was $1.3 million. I only spent $850,000. I could have spent more money. I spent less because I got what the church needed, not what I wanted.
Would you say that being a good steward is spending money appropriately, not as little money as possible?
Yeah, appropriately, for sure. Yeah, because, I mean, I could have spent less. I mean, if I had just gone with the good that they gave me, I probably would have spent $550,000. So I ended up spending $350,000 more to get some of the best things. So, like, in particular, in this case, I worked at a Black Gospel church. Lighting is super important if you're going to stream. So I got the best of the lighting stuff and got some camera stuff in the better and some audio stuff from the good, right? So like it was mix and matching to make it work for what was best for their location.
Is that me?
I didn't hear anything. Is there somebody walking outside your window?
I just heard like a really weird noise. Sorry. Couldn't tell if it was in my headphones from you or if it was in my room.
No, it was in your room.
Sorry. That was very strange.
Sorry. I mean, that's the goal, is to spend what is needed in the right areas that it's needed, but without going overboard. You've got somebody walking outside. I just literally saw somebody walk out by your window.
It's probably one of my children.
So you can always spend more money, right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of really expensive gear out there that's great. There's some really expensive gear out there that's okay. It's just really expensive.
100%.
So don't always go in going, oh, I need the most expensive thing of this. No, you don't. Not necessarily. You may. And it may be
sometimes you do need the gold-plated version of the product.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, with the video system I just bought, I didn't buy the best of the best for the video switcher. I bought a 1080 version instead of the 4K version. I don't need 4K. I'm sending it to YouTube and to campuses, and all of that is being downgraded anyway by YouTube or by Resi. So, although I guess you can pay for 4K with Resi now, but So I didn't buy that because I don't think it's needed currently. But I bought I bought Black Magic gear, so BMD, so that you can upgrade within that industry. So within Black Magic stuff, it's easy to swap things out. So if I eventually want to go to a Constellation 4K, I can, and I'm not changing much. I can still use the exact same video switcher I bought, the actual physical console, with that newer gear.
The control panel.
Right, the control panel. So I bought that on purpose. What I call them, people ask me all the time, what's your audio console? I'm like, it's a really big mouse. What's your video board? It's a really big mouse that controls something in the back, right? I mean, that's all it is. They're just control panels. But people don't understand that. They see really big pieces of stuff sitting on furniture, and they're like, oh, so that's really expensive. Nope, that's not that expensive. The stuff in the back's the really expensive stuff. That doesn't work. If I just bought this, we'd do nothing. It would just sit here because it's a Cat 5 cable. But yeah, it's buying the right things for the right purpose within the budget you're given, right? Sometimes you just don't have a ton of budget, or you need to figure out how to be creative and do it. I would suggest not going in debt as a church to do it if you can afford not to. Sometimes, though, it's worth going in debt to do it because you won't operate without it. And then you're making payments. Luckily, there are people who have good options for that. I know that your company does, right? So you have options that people can make payments on gear. So, and sometimes that's the way you have to go. But if you can afford not to, don't.
Yeah, sometimes, honestly, the majority of times that I quote unquote push it is when a client says, hey, we're going to do this in phases over the next 2 years. And and I know that they're going to do it, right? Because sometimes a lot of times clients will say, yeah, we're going to do this in phases, and they never go past phase one.
Right.
But when I know a client is going to do the phases, a majority of the time, they will save money by taking a loan out and doing it all at the same time than doing it in phases because of the amount of money that changes. So there's I don't think that it's a sin to go into debt, but I'm with you. I am very much if you have the cash, I would much rather you spend the cash.
Yeah.
Type thing. Because most of the time that cash is set aside, and it's not usually like a 911 crap. There's some specific times that I go, yeah, it's probably not a bad idea to, borrow money. But I would say you're 100% accurate. If you can avoid it, avoid it at all costs.
Right, yep.
So
I would also say, in your churches, talk to your pastoral staff now about what you have coming down, what you're going to need going down the road. Hey, I think I'm going to need this in the next 5 to 7 years. Here's the amount that it's going to cost. Based on today's dollars, right? Because then they can start planning on putting money aside to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you could even go one step further. If you bought a brand new Avantis today, like we were talking about earlier, you could say, hey, we should plan on replacing this in 7 years.
Yep.
The average inflation is usually about 3% a year, right?
Right.
Average. You could say, we bought this for $17,000. In 7 years, if we add 3% every single year for the next 7 years, this console will probably cost us blank dollars, right? To replace it with whatever's new. So that's not hard math to do. So, so yeah, I think that there's a lot of ways that we can prevent 911 crap moments.
Right. Yep.
Especially if the church goes, okay, in the next 7 years, we have to come up with $400,000 worth of cash over the course of a decade. The budget every year can be money that goes into some sort of investment, that goes, hey, I got a $20,000 a year budget, 12 of that is going to long-term upgrades,
right.
And 8 of that is going to buying batteries and gaff tape and, the random microphones that fail and, the updated computers and, buying our volunteers pizza and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yep.
Type thought process. I think there's a lot there. Hey, so we're at about an hour right now.
Of course.
And
yeah.
I have probably 3 more pages of notes to talk to you about.
Okay.
I think this is a great place to like pause and
Okay.
say, hey, let's get something on the books to record a second part to
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
Because I think that the next parts I think are really important, but like I think this was really great foundational thought processes, and I think like the next thing would be more like I just said, like let's start building relationships with our volunteers. How do we manage that kind of stuff, all that kind of level, and then how do we mediate between them and leadership? And because there's just like there's so much that we could talk about, and we kind of talked about stewardship, so we can kind of take some of that off. But yeah, man, I think that there's a lot of stuff.
Cool.
But I do want to say thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, as we've talked about. How can people reach out to you if they've got questions or want to follow you on socials?
So my website's vagabondchristian.com. And that has most of my outside of church ministry stuff going on. On social media, I'm known as Whitebeard Punk Monk, with no vowels. So it's WHTBRDPNKMNK. So it's an odd way to find it, but that's where I'm most active. And I'm not that super active at this point, like I'm almost 60. I'm not as active on social media as I was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'm there.
We ask all of our guests to give one piece of advice. It doesn't have to be about what we talked about. It doesn't have to be tech related. It could be, eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day. Something along those lines. What piece of advice do you have for everyone?
I would say, like, find your passion. Try to make that your ministry. Based on, your passion's probably the stuff God's given you. So find that. And if you, I'm going to say it just like I told those bunch of teenagers back in the day. If you're not called to this, get out of the way. Somebody else is called to this ministry. There's another ministry for you.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. Well, again, Tom, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to get something on the books sooner rather than later because, like I said, I've got like 3 more pages of notes. So
I talk a long time. You should remember that.
Oh, no, I fully expect it. I mean, honestly, this is the thing about these things is like we could probably just burn through a lot of these. Mm-hmm. When I had Leon, I had like, again, 3 pages of questions that I just like, because it's like when you're talking with people, it's like, I know a lot of how you feel about things, but it's like having, like, that's the whole point of the podcast, like have the conversation so that like other people can see what our thought processes are. And I know how you feel. And it's like, how do I ask a question that will get you to answer, to give
the
content
way I want
that
you to.
Like, well, not even necessarily the way I want to, but it's like, I want to get what's in your brain out. And it's like, how do you do this? Well, just communicate well.
Yeah. No, not necessarily. Yeah. Yep, for sure. And you and I have worked together at 2 different places, doing 2 different kinds of work. Even though they were both tech related. Yeah, exactly. So cool, dude. Yep. Cool. Anytime. Let me know.